It started as an oddity, a pattern that didn't sit right with me. My wife, Amanda, had always been friendly with our neighbors, but lately her interactions with Sam, the guy next door, were growing suspiciously frequent. She casually mentioned stopping by to drop something off or help with something real quick, but those quick visits stretched longer and longer. One Saturday, I decided to test it. Amanda had said she'd beat a few minutes at Sam and Lily's house, just helping him with something in the yard. It felt like a flimsy excuse, so I decided to watch. From our upstairs window, I had a clear view of the neighbor's backyard, where Sam was supposedly busy with some project. Amanda hadn't noticed me watching when she left, and within minutes, I saw her step into Sam's yard. They laughed together, closer than I expected, but they didn't start on yard work. Instead, they lingered near his back door, talking in hushed tones before disappearing inside. My stomach dropped. Hours later, she returned home, brushing it off like she'd only been gone minutes. I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Oh, it's fine," she replied quickly, too quickly. "Just needed help with some plants." She avoided my gaze, and I forced a smile. But every instinct I had told me there was more going on. That evening, my mind wouldn't rest. The Amanda I thought I knew was devoted and honest. But those quick glances, the casual excuses, the way she brushed it all off, it didn't add up. The next time she slipped over to Sam's place, I decided I wouldn't sit idly by. The turning point came a week later. I saw Lily, our neighbor and Sam's wife, in her front yard, looking distracted. I hesitated, but my suspicions got the better of me, and I approached her. We exchanged small talk, and I tested the waters. "Amanda's been helping Sam a lot lately," I said casually, watching her face. Lily's expression shifted, a hint of something dark flickering across her face. "Yeah," she said, choosing her words carefully. "I've noticed her close." I took a deep breath, knowing I wasn't alone in my suspicions. As I looked at Lily, I could tell she was piecing things together just like I was. She glanced back at her house, hesitating before finally speaking. "They've been helping each other a lot," she said, her tone laced with bitterness. "Sam's always so busy when I'm not around, always needing extra hands from your wife, it seems." We shared a look that confirmed what both of us had dreaded. It wasn't just an innocent friendship or friendly neighborliness. It was something more. My hands tightened into fists, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Look, I need to know for sure," I said, barely recognizing my own voice. "If they're really involved?" Lily's expression hardened as she nodded. "So do I." We hatched a plan. The next time Amanda and Sam had one of their neighborly meetups, Lily and I would be ready. We decided to set up a camera in the living room at her house while Sam was out, one that she could monitor from her phone. It felt invasive, wrong even, but I had to know the truth to see what they were both hiding. Days passed, and I pretended to go on with life as usual. Amanda's behavior was unchanged. Her trips next door were just as frequent, her excuses just as casual. I kept my suspicions to myself, saying nothing about my conversation with Lily or the camera. Finally, one Wednesday afternoon, I got the call I'd been waiting for. "They're over here," Lily said, her voice tense through the phone. "Just got in." I hurried over, and Lily let me in quietly. Together, we stared at the screen on her phone, watching the live feed from the living room. There they were, Amanda and Sam sitting way too close on the couch, their laughter quiet, almost intimate. As they continued talking, Sam leaned closer, resting his hand on Amanda's shoulder, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she turned toward him, her face softening as she met his gaze. Seeing it live, right in front of me, shattered whatever hope I'd clung to that this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. Watching them together, I felt the floor drop from under me. There was no mistaking it now. Amanda wasn't just helping the neighbor or stopping by for a quick chat. She was invested, connected, comfortable in a way that she'd become a stranger to me. Every shared look, every subtle touch confirmed that this wasn't an accident or a momentary lapse. This had been going on right under my nose. Lily was silent beside me, but I could see her fists clench, her jaw tightening as she watched her husband share the same warmth with my wife that he should have reserved only for her. I wasn't sure what was worse, the betrayal from Amanda or the audacity of it happening with the guy next door in his own living room, just a few feet away from his own wife. "They've been at this for months," Lily muttered, breaking the silence. He kept telling me he was helping her with gardening tips, DIY projects, all kinds of things I didn't think twice about. She shook her head, the hurt and anger visible on her face. And I believed him. I took a deep breath, struggling to keep my own emotions in check. I feel like an idiot, I admitted. All the little things, her sudden interest in their family, the time she spent over here saying she was helping with this or that. I ignored it, thought I was just being paranoid. Lily looked at me, and there was a strange understanding in her eyes. You know, if they think we're clueless, maybe we should give them a taste of their own medicine. The idea caught me off guard, but it lingered, igniting something I hadn't felt in weeks. The need to take back control. For too long, I'd been the one waiting, wondering, worrying, while Amanda lived her double life with Sam right in front of me. Part of me wanted justice, and part of me wanted to see her feel even a fraction of the betrayal I was carrying. What are you suggesting? I asked, trying to mask the bitterness in my tone. Lily smirked, her eyes darkening. Maybe it's time they see what it's like when the tables are turned. She didn't have to elaborate. I knew exactly what she meant, and the idea of it simmered in my mind long after I left her house. That night, I replayed Lily's suggestion over and over, the temptation pulling at me. If Amanda and Sam could sneak around right under our noses, then maybe turning the tables wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I wanted Amanda to feel the sting of betrayal, to realize that the game she was playing had consequences. The next day, I messaged Lily, suggesting we meet for coffee to discuss our plan. I wasn't entirely sure what I was walking into, but I knew I was done being passive. When I arrived at the cafe, she was already there, sitting in a corner booth with an expression that mixed hurt and determination. She waved me over, her eyes flashing with the same resolve I felt. Are you sure you want to go through with this? I asked, half hoping she'd say no. Lily leaned forward, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I've spent enough time crying, feeling like a fool while Sam spins his lies. I think it's time we both take some of our lives back, don't you? She was right. For weeks, we've been dealing with this separately, each stuck in a silent struggle against our own spouse's deceit. Maybe, just maybe, teaming up would be the thing that broke through the fog of their betrayal. So, what exactly did you have in mind? I asked, raising an eyebrow. A sly smile curved on her lips. They're not the only ones who can play this game, are they? Over the next few days, our casual interactions became something more. We'd bump into each other at the grocery store, share conversations in hushed tones, walked coincidentally to our cars at the same time. It was subtle, deliberate, and every bit as secretive as the actions of our spouses, but with a clear purpose. The idea was to show Amanda and Sam that we had our own lives outside of them, a chance to turn the tables and let them question what was happening between us. One evening, while Amanda was supposedly at a work event, Lily invited me over under the pretense of needing help with a broken light fixture. I arrived just after sunset, knocking on the door and feeling a strange thrill run through me as she opened it. "Come on in," she said, giving me a look that was hard to decipher. There was tension, yes, but there was also a sense of camaraderie, a shared understanding of the pain we'd both been put through. We ended up in the kitchen, talking and laughing softly as we fixed the light, sharing the kind of easy conversation that had long faded between me and Amanda. Every now and then, I'd catch Lily's gaze lingering on mine, a warmth in her eyes that felt both comforting and oddly exciting. But then, halfway through our conversation, the door opened, and there stood Sam, looking stunned. His face twisted with confusion and a flicker of something else. Jealousy, perhaps? I felt a strange satisfaction seeing him like that, wondering what was running through his mind. Sam's face was a mixture of shock, suspicion, and maybe even a hint of panic. I could almost hear his mind racing as he took in the scene, me standing in his kitchen with Lily, laughing over some inside joke, as if we were the ones with a secret. For the first time, he was the one caught off guard, and the satisfaction I felt was strangely empowering. Lily handled it smoothly, not missing a beat as she smiled at him. "Sam, you're home early," she said with just the right touch of casual warmth. He blinked, looking between us, visibly thrown. Yeah. I finished up earlier than I thought," he mumbled, his eyes narrowing slightly. He didn't take his gaze off me. and I could tell he was sizing up the situation, trying to piece together how long this friendship between me and his wife had been in place. Lily turned back to me, keeping her composure effortlessly. Mark was kind enough to help with the light in the kitchen. It's been flickering for days, and I'd just about given up on it. I shrugged, playing along, sensing how this was eating at him. Happy to help, I said, keeping my tone light but purposeful. Besides, neighbors help each other out, right? The look on Sam's face was priceless. His jaw tightened, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features before he forced a weak smile. He looked at Lily, his tone a little too even. Well, thanks for helping. I didn't know it was that big of an issue. The tension hung in the air like static, and for once, I could see Sam struggling to keep his cool. I could tell he didn't like this one bit. The tables were turning, and for the first time, he was feeling the paranoia and jealousy that had been our daily reality. He cleared his throat, giving me a tight nod. Thanks, Mark. I can take it from here. With that, I took my cue and gave Lily a nod, saying my goodbyes. But as I walked out, I saw the way Sam watched me leave, his eyes lingering in a way that told me he wasn't happy. As I stepped outside, I felt something lift, a strange sense of triumph. For weeks, I'd been the one suffering in silence, but now Sam was the one second-guessing, feeling what it was like to lose control. That night as I walked back home, I couldn't help but smirk at the thought of him stewing over what he'd seen. The next day, it was Amanda's turn to feel the sting. Lily and I had planned to meet at the coffee shop around noon. It wasn't our usual spot, but it was close enough to our neighborhood that Amanda could feasibly see us there. Sure enough, just as we were sitting by the window, chatting over lattes and sharing laughter that came all too naturally, I caught a glimpse of Amanda walking past. She froze, her eyes widening as she saw me with Lily, leaning in close, laughing in a way I hadn't laughed with Amanda in months. Her expression was a mix of surprise and maybe even jealousy. For a second, our eyes met through the glass, and I could tell she didn't know how to react. She quickly looked away and walked on, but I knew that image of me with Lily would stay with her. As we wrapped up our coffee, Lily's expression softened. Do you think they'll learn anything from this? She asked, almost as if questioning our motives for the first time. I paused thinking about it. I don't know if they'll learn anything, but they'll definitely know we're not oblivious. They've taken us for granted, and I think it's time they feel what that's like. Lily nodded, her gaze thoughtful. Maybe this will be enough to wake them up. But deep down, I wasn't sure if I wanted Amanda to wake up, or if I just wanted her to feel the same doubt and betrayal she'd made me live with. That evening, Amanda was quiet. She kept glancing at me from across the room, like she was waiting for me to say something, to explain what she'd seen with Lily at the coffee shop. I could tell her mind was racing, likely replaying all those times she'd snuck over to Sam's, wondering if I knew. Wondering if I'd been playing along in some twisted countergame. I didn't offer any explanations, and the silence between us grew thicker with every passing minute. Finally, she broke. So, you and Lily seem to be spending a lot of time together, she said, attempting a casual tone that didn't quite mask the edge in her voice. I shrugged, pretending to be oblivious. We're neighbors, I replied simply, using her own line of reasoning. Isn't that what neighbors do? Her jaw clenched slightly, and for the first time, I saw a flash of something in her eyes, something I'd been carrying for weeks. Suspicion. You never seemed that close before, she pressed, her tone sharper. I met her gaze, letting the silence draw out until it felt heavy, nearly oppressive. You know, Amanda, I began choosing my words carefully. Sometimes people get close when they feel ignored or taken for granted. Her face paled and she looked away, clearly unprepared for that response. I could tell the reality of what I was implying was hitting her hard, but instead of pushing further, I let her sit with that silence, feeling the weight of her choices. A few days later, I got a message from Lily. Want to see how they're handling it? We both agreed to meet at a bar on the other side of town. It was a place far enough from home that there was no chance of running into anyone we knew. We wanted to avoid creating rumors. This was between us and our spouses, no one else. As soon as we sat down, I could feel the tension unwind, replaced by the relief of having someone who truly understood. Sam's been acting strange, Lily said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. He keeps asking me where I'm going, who I'm with. I think he's finally getting a taste of his own medicine. I smirked, feeling that same satisfaction. Amanda's been quiet too. She doesn't know what to think, but I can tell she's bothered. Lily laughed, and for the first time it felt like we could breathe again. The revenge, though unconventional, had done something more than simply mirror their actions. It had helped us reclaim our self-respect. In that moment, I realized I wasn't alone in my pain. Lily and I shared a connection forged from betrayal, but strengthened by resilience. The irony didn't escape us, though. Here we were, having drinks and laughing about the absurdity of our situation, while our spouses stood in their own guilt and paranoia. It was a twisted kind of justice, but it felt good to turn the tables and remind them that we too were worth fighting for. As we finished our drinks and said our goodbyes, Lily paused, her expression softer than I'd seen before. "Thank you, Mark," she said, "for being there through this. I don't know what I would have done without someone who really understood." I nodded, feeling that same gratitude. "Thank you too, Lily. None of this has been easy, but at least we didn't go through it alone." We parted ways, both knowing that we'd managed to regain some control over lives that had been upended by those closest to us. And although the pain of betrayal lingered for the first time, I felt something like closure. The journey wasn't over, but I was no longer just a victim of their choices. I was finally standing on my own. After that night with Lily, things began to change. I felt lighter, as if confronting Amanda's betrayal head-on, and even turning the tables a bit, had broken the hold her affair had over me. I wasn't trapped in that cycle of doubt anymore. Instead, I'd regained my footing. It was strange, but for the first time in weeks, I felt in control of my own life again. The tension between Amanda and me grew sharper. She kept glancing at me, searching for any hint that I'd drop more information or admit to knowing what I did. But I held my cards close, watching her struggle with the questions I knew she wanted to ask. I could tell she was unsettled by my silence, and part of me was glad for that. Maybe now she understood what it felt like to live with suspicion. One evening, she finally broke down. "Mark, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. There's something I need to tell you." I took a deep breath, bracing myself. "Go on." She paused, clearly wrestling with the words. "I haven't been honest with you," she began, her eyes welling up. "I made mistakes with Sam. Things I regret." The admission felt both hollow and overdue. I waited, letting her continue, but I knew her confession didn't carry the weight it would have if she told me on her own terms. Now, it felt like she was only coming clean because she feared what I might already know. "Mark, I'm so sorry," she whispered, reaching for my hand. "I don't want to lose you. I want us to move past this." I looked down at her hand resting on mine, the same hand that had once been so familiar, so trusted. But now it felt foreign, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. "Do you really think we can move past this?" I asked, my voice steady. She swallowed, nodding. "If we both want it, yes." But as I looked at her, I realized I no longer wanted the same things. The betrayal, the lies, the countless excuses, it had broken something fundamental between us. And while I'd been able to find solace in my friendship with Lily, what I once had with Amanda felt like it had faded into something unrecognizable. "I don't think I can," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Too much has happened, Amanda. Maybe you don't want to lose me, but you lost me the moment you chose him." The tears spilled over as she dropped her hand, the finality of my words hitting both of us at once. I knew this was it, the real ending to a story that had been fractured by deceit long before I'd ever suspected it. In the weeks that followed, we began the process of separating, and I felt a strange relief wash over me. While there was sadness, there was also a freedom that came with letting go. I no longer had to wonder or wait for the next betrayal. I was finally in control of my own life again. Lily and I kept in touch, supporting each other through our respective separations. It wasn't easy, but having someone who understood my pain and my journey made all the difference. We'd both emerged from the ordeal changed, a little scarred, but stronger than we'd been before. In time, I began to focus on myself, on rebuilding my life with a new sense of purpose. The hurt hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had faded, replaced by a quiet resilience. And as I looked toward the future, I knew that whatever lay ahead, I was finally ready to face it on my own terms.